welcome, guys.
Where's your tie, buddy?
Yeah. Man, this is cool. Like, we started this thing, there were 6 guys. Where's Dave Gaynor? Do you remember that? Like 6, 7 guys? Now you're back and there's like 30 of us. So there's obviously something compelling going on. Yeah, like Nick said, I've been having this talk on my heart for at least the last month, if not more. And because of preschool and the weather, if it sucks, I haven't looked at it in 3 weeks, so we'll see how it goes. But it's really been something I wanted to talk about. Last year, 2020, was really the year of establishing our group and figuring out what do we want to be as a group of men. And looking inwards, like how do we create relationships with each other? How do we go on more authentic, more deep relationship level than we typically do as men, where it's just like, let's talk about sports, let's talk about weather, let's go have a beer. But let's really dig in, and what does that look like? So we've talked about that trust, communication, and authenticity creates a real relationship. 2020 is like men of action. And men of action is, what are we going to do as men to actually get out there and make an impact? It's cool we built these relationships with these guys. These are things that are the foundation of the harbor. But then how do we get out and actually make an impact in our community and really do be better husbands, fathers, and spiritual leaders for our community? So Kurt recommended a book. Where are you at, Kurt? Called If You Want to Walk on Water, You Got to Get Out of the Boat. And so it's really about that story of Simon Peter and what was his experience when Christ came to meet them on the stormy waters, and what does that being a man of action really mean? And then how do we take that story and apply it to today's world, into what we all deal with as men in our community? And what does that really look like to be men of action? How do we get started? Like, it's very daunting to think about, okay, how do we go from where we are today to where we want to get to without taking incremental steps and getting there? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Hey JD, real quick.
Yo.
So I'm gonna let you choose. You can either use the microphone or you're gonna have to speak up some more.
I'll speak up more.
All right.
So, here's the book. If you want to get, if you want to walk on water, you got to get on the boat. And I pulled some quotes from the book that really are effective to this talk today. So I'm going to just go ahead and read it, and we'll decompose a little bit. So the choice to follow Jesus, the choice to grow, is the choice for the constant recurrence of fear. You've got to get out of the boat a little every day. Here's the deep truth about water walking. Fear is never going to go away. Fear and growth go together. It's a package deal. And the decision to grow always involves a choice between risk and comfort. This means that to be a follower of Jesus, you must renounce comfort as the ultimate value of your life. If you live in fear, you'll never experience the potential God has placed in you. Growth always involves risk, and risk always involves fear. So I'm going to go back. This means that to be a follower of Jesus, you must renounce comfort as the ultimate value of our life. We do this as a culture. Comfort is like the end goal. We talked about this in Tribe, is like we shoot at these targets that aren't even real. We shoot at fame, fortune, money, and comfort. But it's always unfulfilling. Like we're always filling it up. How many rich people have you seen be super excited or super happy or super fulfilled? You just don't see it because we're shooting at these false targets. So Ortberg talks about comfort should not be the ultimate value of our life. It shouldn't be. And risk and fear and growth, those are the types of things that we should be seeking out. Has anybody heard that quote that says, your comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there? It makes so much sense, right? Everybody should have a comfort zone, and it's not a bad thing. You know, if you go home with your wife and your kids, you get in your comfy clothes and you hang out and watch a movie, that's like comfortable. And that's great. Everybody needs it. You should have that. If you don't have that, there's probably a problem. But that's not where you're making incremental growth and strides in your life. There was a famous Navy SEAL that was asked this question, like, how did you become so successful? How did you get through some of the things that were so hard in BUDS training? And he said, the key to success, or key to my success, is getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And that's growth, right? We don't grow when we're still in our comfort zone. We don't grow when we're in the parameters of our comfort zone. It's just not where it grows. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start challenging each other of how do we get out of our comfort zone? How do we take those incremental steps that aren't too daunting where nothing happens, but just incremental enough where you keep that momentum going? So some key takeaways from the book. So if you research anything about the book or John Ortberg, he breaks down if you want to walk on water, get out of the boat, into 4 main topics. So it's discerning God's call. And Nick's going to do a talk later in this series around that word discernment. What does that really mean, other than listen for or react upon? But discernment's a really chosen word, and we'll talk about more, but I'm just going to hit the wave tops today. So discerning God's call, transcending fear, risking faith, and ultimately trusting God. So we're going to go first into discerning God's call. And so we picked up the story here in Matthew. It's basically they're out on the water. Big waves, a lot of wind, storm. I think of, like, anybody watch Deadliest Catch?
I love that show.
So I think of it like when weather comes up and those guys are out there, that's what I imagine as the storm. So the disciples are in the boat and then they see this image coming towards them. And this is where we pick it up. So, but immediately Jesus spoke to them saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid." Peter answered and said to him, "Lord, if it is you, bid me come out to you on the water." He said, "Come." So notice what he didn't do. Peter didn't just say, like, "Is that Jesus?" and then take that first step and immediately go out of the boat. Like, he wanted to make sure that it was truly Jesus, and he wanted to discern what that call was. Until he heard Jesus say, "Come," he didn't take a step out of the boat. So what does this mean? It means that Christ doesn't call us to be reckless. He doesn't call us to follow Jesus or to be in service of him. It's not for us to be adrenaline junkies or thrill seekers. We first need to understand what he's actually calling us to do, and that's that discernment. And Ortberg, in his book, also talks about this calling. Choosing a calling is actually an oxymoron, because we don't choose what we're called to do. A calling requires a callee, which is God, and a caller, which is God, and a callee, who is us. And how do we understand that communication pathway? We talked about this maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Richard, you said it really well. It's like you have to put your mind on receive mode to discern God's call, right? It'd be nice if we had a two-way radio, right? Pick it up and listen to it whenever we wanted to and have that direct communication. That's not the way it works. We really have to understand what discernment is. And then this notion of explore versus exploit. This is in another book called Atomic Habits. But it really pairs well with this book as well, is we explore what we're good at. We should explore what makes us fulfilled. We explore when we feel authentic or when we're really genuine. And then we exploit that, meaning we do more of it. For me, the harbor is really where I feel most fulfilled. It's where I feel most authentic. So I want to do more of it. I want to interact with you guys. I want to go out and shoot plays. I want to go play top golf. I want to do all this stuff with you guys. Because this is where I feel like God's calling me to be. We all have that calling. We all have that thing that we're better at than other people. How do we use that in service of Christ? How do we do those 1% improvements to be better at what we do and overcome that inertia? Okay? So transcending fear. This is, so Nate, what's your word of the year 2020? Connection. Now what's yours, Nate, or Nick?
Surrender.
Surrender and connection, right? Those are the words of 2020. This is my anti-word of 2020. I hate this word. Inertia is so bad. A tendency to do nothing will remain unchanged. It's that tendency we have to just do nothing. Like, there's always a reason not to do something we know we should do. There's always going to be an excuse. So I'm going to tell a quick story about a hugely impactful situation in my life that happened when there was a marriage counselor here at church. So about 3 years ago, Phil brought in a marriage counselor from the Springs, and his pitch was basically, I don't care where your marriage is, whether it's in the best of times, the worst of times, or somewhere in between. It's always good to get some education. And so it was a workshop from 6 to 9 on a Friday night. And it was free, but we had to get some childcare. And so it was Friday night, it had been a long week, stressful week at work. And I just got out of the shower, getting ready to go, and I just sit down in our chair in our master bedroom. And it just like, I was like magnetized to the chair. It was almost like I couldn't move. I'm like, man, I do not want to go to this stupid thing. And my parents just got there to watch the kids. And I had every excuse. I'm like, maybe we just wouldn't go. Like, it'd be much easier to throw on the comfy clothes, watch a movie, hang out. And my wife's like, well, we should probably just go. And so I literally had to peel myself out of the chair because I had to overcome this stupid thing called inertia. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to get out of the chair and we'll go from there. And the fact that we went to that thing had changed my life. Because one of the things that Doug, who is the marriage counselor, said is, before you go to bed every night, pray with your spouse. I don't care if you guys are in a great place. I don't care if you've had too much to drink that night. I don't care if you guys are angry as hell with each other. Pray at night before you go to bed. And it has revolutionized our marriage. And I'm not going to tell you that every night we're like, the prayers are super powerful or they mean so much, but there's nights where I get to peek into what my wife's thinking, what my wife is really on her heart, and it has literally changed our marriage. All because I overcame inertia to get out of that chair. And how many times have you been in those situations where it's like, there are so many reasons to keep you where you are. There's so many factors that keep you where you are, and overcoming this inertia thing is so difficult. We talked about that, Nick. It's just that overcoming from doing nothing to starting something, and that's what we're going to try to talk about today. So the transcending fear. Kurt likes that. It's really true though. So they did a study, and this is in John Ortberg's book as well. They did a study about how much dopamine is released in your head, or cortisol that's released in your head when you try something and fail versus not trying at all. And you actually get more delight if you try something and fail at it than if you never understand or never know if you would have failed. So everybody talks about Peter in this story and how he took his eyes off the Savior and started looking at the storm and started to sink, and how that's kind of a failure. But what nobody talks about are the 11 other wimps that stayed in the boat and never understood or experienced what it was like to walk on water, right? Peter at least got to go to his grave understanding what that feeling was, what those sensations were about walking on water. The 11 other disciples that were too scared or too trepidatious to step out of the boat, they're always going to go to their grave with, I wonder what would have happened if. I don't want to be a group of guys that always wonder what would have happened if, right? And again, there's more fulfillment when you try something and fail than if you never try at all. That really struck with me. Because there's been so many times in my life where I'm like, maybe not, it's safer here. And you always think like, what if would have happened? So the next part, does anybody, Kurt, maybe you know, do you know much about the British cycling team?
I don't.
Oh, okay. I'm going to step over here to this one. So the British cycling team, they were, in the 2004 Olympics, they were abysmal. They got either last place or second to last in almost every event in the 2004 Summer Olympics. And then they got a new coach. Right after the Olympics ended, they got a new coach. And this coach started focusing on 1% improvements. So they'd look at trivial things you would think of, like what's the weight of their saddle? What's the tread of their tire when they're running at optimal speed? What does their diet look like? What does their exercise program look like? What do their sleep habits look like? What do their team activities look like? And they try to make 1% incremental differences in all of that. So shed maybe 1% off the weight of the saddle, sleep 1% more, train 1% harder. They use this 1% mentality across every area of their training, their diet, their sleep, everything. What happened in 2008? They medaled 14 times. 8 of them were gold because they had a 1% mentality. So don't think of it as transforming your life. Think of it as trying to be 1% better at things you do. Be 1% better at work. Be 1% better with your kids. Be 1% more loving with your wife. 1% differences. 1% improvements make 100% difference. That's not overwhelming, at least to me. I can start thinking and wrapping my head around what a 1% improvement is in my life. Okay? Also in Atomic Habits, he says if you are overweight or out of shape and you want to get in shape, don't go look at the men's health magazines with guys with like the shredded pecs and the six-pack abs, they're all bronzed out. Go and set a goal of 1 push-up. Anybody can do 1 push-up. So he even says set a timer and go 5 minutes to the gym. When you're done with that 5 minutes, then stop. Because you start building this momentum, getting over this stupid thing called culture. You know what it's like? We see each other at the gym all the time. We don't start there like lifting the 80-pound weights, right? You have to gradually get there. But it's amazing what that momentum looks like when you start small. It's something that's not overwhelming, something that's not going to take all your confidence away, and you start building on that. To me, it's just overcoming that stupid word inertia. Risking faith. So I really went deep into discerning God's call and transcending fear. I'm going to leave a little bit more meat on the bone on risking faith and trusting God. Just in the interest of time, and we're going to break this book down a little bit more. But the things that really struck me about risking faith, we talked about this last night, Joe. What have we done to answer it, right? We're risking it. When we give something to God, we're like, hey, I have this on my heart and I need some help. And we don't hear anything but crickets. It's kind of dejecting. And even worse, what if we don't like the answer, right? If we want God's call to be that, the genie in a bottle and we just ask him for something, he gives it to us, and it's a different way or it's a pivot away from what we think we want because it's in his plan, that's almost more daunting. It's almost more overwhelming. And Ortberg continually talks about this, because Jesus is not in the boat. We talked about this in the first quote. Christ is not going to meet us in our comfort zone. Christ is going to meet us when we're risking fear, when we're actually trying to get out of the boat and overcome our fears. And then trusting God. This goes back to using your God-given gifts, like we talked about. When do you really feel most authentic? When do you feel most fulfilled? When do you feel most where you're supposed to be in your sweet spot? And then how do you use those skills and traits to the glory of His kingdom? And then this quote by James Clear from Atomic Habits is, the cost of good habits is the present, and the cost of bad habits is the future. So what does that mean? So D, if you go to the gym after this, right, that's an hour where you're going to be putting yourself through some physical abuse, right? And you're going to be sacrificing that hour for things that aren't that much fun. But the future is, you look better, you feel better, you have better heart rate, you have lower cholesterol, all these health benefits that you get because you're sacrificing now to get that in the future. The flip side is true as well. In fact, if you decided not to go to the gym and go to the bar and grab a six-pack and maybe a pack of smokes and go back home and watch SportsCenter, you might feel good in the present, but you're sacrificing your health in the future. So that's something to think about, is that inertia thing is, what are we doing in the present that's going to be benefiting our future? Or what are we doing in the present that's going to be detrimental to the future? So that was just kind of a key thing that stuck out to me in Atomic Habits is, if we are going to be spending time, we are going to make these improvements, what are we doing to sacrifice now that's going to improve the future? Then I'm going to leave you with this quote. So Teddy Roosevelt wrote some pretty cool things, and he's probably one of the coolest presidents, I think. So powerful. So I'm just going to read it. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or the doer of deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcomings. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, with great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of his achievement, and at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So that his place may never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. We don't want to be those cold and timid souls that didn't get out of the focus. Okay? Men of action, 1% improvements, getting over inertia. So, that's your table talks today. I want you guys to talk about what's keeping you from getting your feet wet. So what are those things that are keeping you from, as in my case, was getting out of the chair to go to a counselor? What God-given talents can you explore and then exploit? So what do you have? Like, what are those things that you're better at than other people that you can use to continue to exploit? And then how do you take the first step in overcoming that? So, we have about 25 minutes. Got a good group of guys. Let's go ahead and get this going. So thanks, guys.